Panic sets in. Carney crushed by German reporter. CTV host mocks Liberals live. In a tense exchange that has captured international attention, Prime Minister Mark Carney faced pointed questioning from a German reporter regarding Canada's capacity to fulfill its ambitious agreements with Germany and Europe. The inquiry exposed glaring gaps in Canada's infrastructure, particularly the absence of functional East Coast ports and critical pipelines, which cast doubt on the feasibility of these international commitments. While Canadian media have largely celebrated Carney's first deal as a diplomatic triumph, this overseas scrutiny underscores a growing skepticism about the government's ability to deliver. It signals a stark contrast between domestic narratives and operational reality, suggesting that Carney's promises may be more aspirational than actionable. This has fueled debates both internationally and within Canada about the credibility and practicality of current government policies. Central to the criticism are Canada's trade policies and industrial competitiveness. Despite the United States imposing a 50% tariff on steel and aluminum imports, Canada has only responded with a 25% tariff, leaving domestic industries at a significant disadvantage. The federal industrial carbon tax further exacerbates this burden, hitting Canadian steel and aluminum workers already struggling under U.S. tariffs. Carney's adoption of the Canadian Sovereignty Act, which aims to eliminate these taxes, appears ambitious, yet the government's historical record of regulatory overreach and anti-business policies casts doubt on its feasibility. Over the past decade, such policies have contributed to the decline of domestic industries, forced businesses to relocate to the United States, and eroded Canada's industrial base, raising serious concerns about long-term economic competitiveness. Canada's response to U.S. trade measures has also been fraught with controversy. Retaliatory tariffs on U.S. steel, aluminum, and automotive sectors were intended to protect Canadian industries, yet media coverage frequently framed them as harmful, contradicting Carney's statements about maximizing pressure on the U.S. while minimizing domestic impact. Furthermore, Canadian media largely overlooked the initial imposition of U.S. tariffs, leaving the public underinformed about the broader economic context. The result is a persistent misunderstanding of the government's role and responsibility in trade disputes, while Canadian businesses continue to bear the economic brunt of these tensions. Investment trends under Carney's leadership have compounded economic concerns. Net investment reportedly dropped by $60 billion within the first 5 months of his tenure, while national deficits continue to climb. Key infrastructure projects, including pipelines, LNG plants, nuclear facilities, and hydroelectric developments, remain uninitiated. Meanwhile, housing development goals are faltering, with construction projected to decline despite promises to double home building. Essentially, government spending is increasing without yielding measurable economic growth, tangible infrastructure, or improved housing outcomes, leaving many Canadians questioning the efficacy of Carney's economic strategy. International commitments further highlight Canada's limitations. The country has deployed troops to Ukraine and leads NATO operations in Latvia, yet logistical realities constrain military capacity. Deploying forces abroad requires a doubling of personnel at home to maintain operational readiness, a factor often overlooked in public discourse. Expanding these commitments without addressing such constraints risks stretching military resources too thin, potentially undermining both domestic security and international reliability. These limitations illustrate the complex balance between ambition and capability in Canada's foreign policy. Carney's visit to Germany brought Canada's infrastructure gaps into sharper focus. While the government promotes potential LNG exports and critical minerals partnerships, East Coast LNG terminals are non-existent. Essential pipelines are missing, and northern ports such as Churchill face severe logistical challenges, including permafrost, ice roads, extreme costs, and a limited 3-month shipping window. Regulatory obstacles extend a timeline for mining and infrastructure projects to 10 to 15 years, rendering most international agreements largely symbolic. This reality undermines investor confidence and raises questions about the viability of promised partnerships with Germany and Europe. The broader narrative suggests that much of Carney's domestic and international activity prioritizes optics over substance. Federally funded media amplify government messaging, creating an illusion of progress while regulatory hurdles, investment gaps, and project delays persist. Canadians are often presented with press releases and photo opportunities rather than actionable strategies and measurable outcomes. Promises of infrastructure development, LNG exports, and international partnerships frequently function as performative gestures rather than practical solutions, fostering skepticism among the public and international observers alike. Economic and trade challenges compound these concerns. Tariffs, carbon taxes, and regulatory overreach continue to impede Canadian industry, while declining investment threatens long-term competitiveness. Without meaningful policy reform or effective infrastructure development, Canada risks falling behind global competitors, leaving its economic influence and credibility at stake. The divergence between ambitious diplomatic agreements and domestic capacity undermines Canada's credibility abroad and fuels public disillusionment with government promises, raising questions about the country's ability to execute on its commitments. The government's approach to media and narrative control further complicates public perception. Emphasizing carefully curated appearances and leveraging federally funded channels, the administration cultivates a sense of achievement that may not align with on-the-ground realities. International partners, such as Germany, are likely more focused on tangible capabilities and realistic timelines than domestic PR victories. This divergence highlights the challenge Canada faces in asserting meaningful influence on the global stage while grappling with significant domestic limitations. In conclusion, Canada's domestic and international challenges are deeply intertwined. Trade imbalances, regulatory barriers, inadequate infrastructure, and insufficient investment collectively undermine the country's ability to fulfill its promises to Europe and beyond. While Carney emphasizes Canada's global role, the reality is that the country's influence often reflects its inaction rather than its accomplishments. A focus on optics rather than execution leaves Canadians skeptical of their government's capacity to deliver meaningful results. For Canada to achieve both domestic stability and international credibility, it must prioritize actionable strategies, real investment, and pragmatic infrastructure development, bridging the gap between ambitious declarations and achievable outcomes.